For 175 years, First Presbyterian Church members have believed deeply in this passage from Luke and have expressed it in word and deed. We have been blessed with so many members who have given generously that it is not possible to properly recognize or even list them in this short presentation. So we have chosen the founders of the McKinnon Trust and the Parish Fund to illustrate the Christian spirit of giving of all that have come before us.
The hills suddenly come to an end, and there is one long final descent. Out in the distance, as far as the eye can see, the land is flat, dark, and unbroken, sweeping away in a faint, misty haze to the limits of the horizon. This is the Great Delta.
The Delta of 1846 was mostly dense forest, where there were more panthers and bears than there were people. The area was remote and dangerous and really a treacherous place to travel. To get here, you could either walk, ride a horse, or arrive in a boat. First Presbyterian Church of Greenwood was organized in 1846 under the leadership of Robert M. Morrison. During this early period, pastors that served were circuit riders or stated supply ministers. These ministers served several churches in the area by riding on horseback. The early congregation met in a two-story frame building that was located at the corner of Market and George Streets. They called this a union church because they shared the building with the Methodist and alternated worship services every Sunday. In the early days of the church, records were kept at the clerk's home. In 1877, there was a fire at the clerk of the sessions home that destroyed all the church records from 1846 to 1877. However, in the vault, we found a beautifully bound book from 1850 that included the minutes of the circuit meetings at that time. So now it appears that this is the oldest record of the church. When reading this book, we recognize names of families whose descendants are currently members of the church.
The McKinnon Trust story has two sisters at its origin. Their lives intersected with others bearing familiar names like Kiesler, Wade, and Parish. All were First Presbyterian members. Fanny Walton and Harriet's father was Jackson Reeves, born 1865 in Carrollton. He earned 2 degrees from the University of Mississippi. Mary Caroline Wade, known as Carrie, was born in Holmes County. Carrie married Jackson in 1891 in the West Mississippi Presbyterian Church. The couple lived in French Camp, where Jackson served as the Academy's second headmaster. The dawn of the 20th century presented an opportunity to lead a new school in Linville, Tennessee.
The purpose was to fill the educational void created by the Civil War and to ready the students for entrance into newly established universities.
Sadly, Jackson was only 46 when tuberculosis took his life.
Carrie and her 6 children returned to Mississippi to make a home in Greenwood near family who were living there. That same year, Carrie's younger brother, George A. Wade, founded Wade Hardware. Its mission was to sell supplies to commissaries scattered throughout the Mississippi Delta. Today, the company is known as Wade Incorporated and is still managed by the fourth generation of the Wade family, all of whom are First Presbyterian members.
Six years after the Civil War had left the area devastated, Charlotte Marr Parish, known as Lottie, was born on Shell Mound Plantation.
They came back after the war. They had no money. They had no resources. Poverty was so intense.
When her father died at age 39, her mother was left to raise 6 young children.
There's a letter written by my grandmother saying, "Could you let me have $5? The children are so hungry."
Lottie and a sister were sent to live with Uncle Will Parish, a prominent doctor in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Their education was in a combination of Quaker, Catholic, and Protestant schools. Returning to Mississippi, Lottie studied at Industrial Institute and College in Columbus. Now known as Mississippi University for Women, it was the first state-supported college for women in the United States. Samuel R. Keesler was born 1866 in Rock Hill, South Carolina. It was a business trip at age 24 that first brought Samuel to Greenwood.
He came to supervise a dozen or so field hands who were coming down to work on the huge plantation of Mr. Lorraine Craig. There was also 2 big boxcars with mules to take to the Mississippi Delta.
Samuel saw opportunity in the booming cotton business of the 1890s Delta and left his family to move permanently to Greenwood. On June 5, 1894, these 2 exceptional people, Samuel R. Keesler and Lottie Parish, were joined in matrimony. With his business career on the rise, the couple soon moved into their first home. According to the Delta Flag newspaper, it had all the latest improvements such as electric bells, waterworks for kitchen, electric lights, etc.
Largely through the dedicated efforts of our young reverend and the earnest workers, a new church was built. We held bake sales, fish fries, and ice cream suppers.
The new building will be one of the finest church edifices in the state. It is estimated it will cost at least $25,000 to build and furnish the structure.
The cornerstone was laid on May 13th, 1904. The first Keesler home was only a block away from the rebuilt church at its Washington and Main location. So the family most likely walked down this street to attend church services.
The Keesler's second child, Sam Jr., joined First Presbyterian Church by profession of faith in 1907, while Fannie Walton Reeves did so in January 1910. Whether Sam Jr. and Fannie Walton first met in church or at school, their attachment to each other grew fervently in their high school years.
The class of 1913 requests the honor of your presence at the graduating exercises on Tuesday evening, May 27, 1913, in Jefferson Davis School Auditorium.
That evening, high school sweethearts Fannie Walton and Sam Jr. were honored by their graduating class as valedictorian and salutatorian. Fannie Walton's education continued in Columbus at Mississippi State College for Women, a high-quality collegiate education coupled with practical vocational training. It would be Davidson College, a North Carolina Presbyterian school, where Sam Jr. would attend and continue to excel.
The fates were kind when they sent to our class one of Sam's caliber, for there are few like him. His easy, courteous manner marks him a gentleman of the true old Southern type, while his popularity and the confidence placed in his ability is shown by his position as president of the student body.
April 6, 1917, and the United States took up arms to join the Allies.
Sam Jr. enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Service on May 13, 1917. He never even had time to attend graduation ceremonies. He was commissioned a second lieutenant in August and selected for training as an aerial observer.
General S.R. Keesler and wife and Miss Fannie Walton Reeves returned last night from Memphis, where they met Lieutenant Sam Keesler en route to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he has been stationed.
By March 1918, Sam Jr. was sailing to France to join the 24th Aero Squadron in the Verdun sector of the Western Front. But his high school sweetheart was ever on his mind.
September 25th, 1918. Dearest Mother, you can't imagine my joyous surprise when I read in one of Fannie Walton's letters all about the ring. She was thanking me for it and telling me what a beauty it was and how much she loved it. She loves you dearly, and Father too. We may have a decision next year yet. Now if I can just keep from getting bumped off until that time, I'll be happy. So many boys are getting it though. Lots of love from your devoted son, Sam Jr.
Fannie Walton and Sam Jr. were engaged to marry.
October 8th, 1918. Dearest Mother, I am just as well as if you were here to take care of me, and my morale is good. Your letter which came yesterday and one from Father were enjoyed immensely. News from home is one of my greatest joys over here. I go out again at 5 o'clock in the morning. Keep on praying, dearest Mother. We never know what's going to happen. Lots of love to you all, especially for you, Mother. Devotedly your son, Sam Jr.
On his next mission, Sam Jr. and his pilot were shot down behind enemy lines. He died in a German hospital only a month before the armistice ending the First World War. He was only 22 years old. Congo Free State, an ironic name for an African colony ruthlessly exploited by King Leopold II of Belgium in the late 19th century. It was the scene of brutal atrocities against the natives by the Belgian colonizers. Not surprisingly, the Presbyterian General Assembly found no one to answer the call to establish a ministry, until two young men, Samuel N. Lapsley and William Shepherd, stepped forward in 1889. The duo had to raise enough money to build a small steamship for transportation from Congo's coastal city to its interior, where the mission was founded 900 miles upriver. It would be these first American Presbyterian missionaries that would risk everything to expose the crimes they witnessed through the Congo Reform Association, one of the world's first humanitarian organizations. Spring 1912 found the Presbyterian mission in desperate need of a captain for the steamship Lapsley. Archibald C. McKinnon, on the verge of completing study at Union Theological Seminary, received an urgent appeal to fill the role.
Somebody told the mission that I had experience with machinery and steam power and had operated a steamboat. I had already volunteered to be a missionary, but was still debating which field I would choose.
Arch wrote to his presbytery asking that he be ordained a minister.
I did not want to be just a steamboat captain and not be able to preach and baptize. They made me preach a trial sermon, questioned me on the essential doctrines of Presbyterianism, and they ordained me.
Arch enthusiastically shared the news of his ordination with his wife, Eva Mabel King.
She congratulated me and expressed her wholehearted agreement that we should go to the Congo as missionaries.
The McKinnons faithfully served the Presbyterian mission at Luebo for the next 12 years until Eva's death in February 1924. Arch was heartbroken, but prayed to continue working for the Lord in the Congo.
It would be almost 2 months before Fanny Walton received the news that her fiancé, Sam Jr., had been killed in action.
December 26, 1918. Dearest General and Mrs. Kiesler, how good and sweet you have both been to me, and how I do love you both. Sometimes I feel that I can't bear the loneliness of it all. To me, Sam stood for all that was best and most worthwhile in life: a husband, a home, and children. But God did not intend that these should be mine. Sam has finished his life. His work has been done, and done well. Our Heavenly Father has work for me yet to do, and I must live the best I can. Lovingly yours, Fanny Walton.
Fanny Walton completed her studies at Mississippi State College for Women and afterward attended Assembly Training School for Religious Workers in Richmond, Virginia. In 1928, she became Director of Christian Education at First Presbyterian in Birmingham, where divine intervention and matchmaking efforts by friends resulted in an introduction to Arch McKinnon. And by Arch's account, things moved rather quickly, until August 14th, when
a wedding of more than usual interest was beautifully solemnized yesterday afternoon at 12:30 o'clock, when Miss Fanny Walton Reeves was married to Reverend Arch Cornelius McKinnon of Stanton, Tennessee.
The newlywed couple departed New York City on the SS Penland, bound for Antwerp, Belgium. Following several weeks of intensive study for the bride, during which she learned the Congolese language, they set out for the mission station in Luebo, a journey of over 6,000 miles.
whistle cord of the Lapsley was pulled to announce our arrival, and all of Luebo recognized the welcome sound. It was good to be home again and to have the fellowship of missionary friends. It was also good to feel the warmth of love of the native friends who wanted to see me and my new wife, who was able to greet them in their native tongue.
Fanny Walton's work focused on teaching the young girls she called treasures of darkness. On the occasion of her first graduate, she spoke to all her students.
We have lavished our love and affection on you, taught you to love Christ, to appreciate character, morality, integrity, wisdom, and perseverance.
In 1950, there were 4,907 converts to Christianity. We had 10 mission stations, 5 hospitals, and 10 dispensaries, 35,000 students in schools, and a total of 70,000 church members. We gave grateful thanks to God. My body was weary after the labors of many years. It was time to leave and go home to retire.
Back in Greenwood, Arch and Fanny Walton resided with her unmarried sister, Harriet.
In the basement of that house, Arch had an antique dentist drill.
He would carve these tiny little elephants with that drill with very great precision, and it was just exciting. And then the thrill was he'd put one in your hands and say, "This is for you."
I can't stress enough about what a wonderful couple they were. Devoted Christians.
Harriet was just a real special friend of mine, and we would talk about things going on at the church. I always admired her so much and really looked up to her.
After the passing of Arch and Fanny Walton, Harriet Reeves wanted to create a fitting memorial to her sister and brother-in-law. They had committed their lives toward foreign mission work, and now Harriet joined the cause by creating the McKinnon Trust.
Robert Parker Parish, known as Rob, was a sergeant in Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. From Appomattox, he proceeded to walk and hitch wagon rides home to Clinton, Mississippi. Rob married Mary Delitha Nash, had 6 children, and was farming near Greenwood when fatally stricken with malaria at age 39. Their second-born, Lottie Parish, was the future Mrs. S.R. Kiesler, and her younger brother was only 2 years old when his father died. It was this Robert Parker Parish who married Ethel Damer, the organist at First Presbyterian Church for almost half a century. And it was their son, known as Bob Parish, who married Mary Elizabeth Sims in 1937. Bob's entire business career was in banking, starting as a young apprentice at the Bank of Greenwood.
Mr. Parish was highly regarded in the banking community and very successful. President of the Bank of Greenwood, chairman of the board, past president of the Mississippi Bankers Association, and even had an office position within the American Bankers Association. He also served our community as president of our Chamber of Commerce, president of the Delta Council, chairman of the American Red Cross. Mr. Parish was chairman of our Board of Deacons, which handled the money back in the 30s and 40s. Also chaired the Building and Grounds Committee.
Mary Elizabeth was also very active in the community, volunteering through the Greenwood Junior Auxiliary and the Greenwood Garden Club. At the church, she also served as an officer on the executive board and was program chair of Presbyterian Women.
Mary Elizabeth was one of the sweetest ladies that I ever knew. She was always here in church and always kind to everybody.
Bob and Mary Elizabeth were the kindest, sweetest
generous in thoughts, notes. They would write letters.
Mary Elizabeth and Bob delighted in their only child, a daughter named Lala Boyd.
My mother and Lala Boyd Parish were best friends growing up. They always played together and dressed alike and loved each other.
My mother and her mother thought that we needed to learn the social graces. So when we were younger, in grammar school, we were taken on Saturday afternoon to learn to dance. She was a very outstanding young lady.
She won every citizenship award. Always had a great group of friends around her. They all danced, they all sang, they all loved to play the piano and put on little routines. There was nobody prettier or smiled better or smiled more or had more lovely manners or love in other people than Lala Boyd.
An unseen enemy invades Hull. Perhaps from overseas came a sudden attack of that most dreaded disease, polio. Doctors and nurses were doing all they can, treating also patients stricken before the present outbreak.
It seemed to be a dreaded disease. We were all very scared and frightened of it.
And everybody was very worried, of course, that summer about polio. She wasn't feeling well at school one day. She just looked at my mother and said, "I don't feel well." And the next few days, they knew that she had polio.
Lala Boyd was admitted to Mercy Hospital in Vicksburg. She corresponded with friends and family in order to keep up with the news from home.
September 22nd, 1951. Dear Charles, my nurse, Ms. Cole, is letting me dictate this to her. I am still in the iron lung, but my feeling much better today. I have never seen in all my life so many beautiful flowers, sweet cards, and telegrams. I appreciate you so much. The doctors and nurses are all very sweet.
They're trying to get me to use a portable respirator. I'm going to get out of isolation Wednesday, and will I be glad? September 26, 1951. Dearest Charles, well, today I got out of isolation, and it's a wonderful feeling. Mrs. Cole washed my hair Monday night, and it was really a mess. I'm so glad we beat October 1951. Dearest Charles, today I breathed 2 minutes without the respirator. I was really very proud. My goal is to be out of the lung by Thanksgiving. I hope to be home sometime Christmas. I expect you to pick me up for midnight mass Christmas Eve night. See you soon. Love, Lala Boyd.
Lala Boyd Parish, 14-year-old daughter of Mr. and Mrs. R.P. Parish, Jr., died in Mercy Hospital in Vicksburg early Sunday.
This award is in place to keep alive those wonderful traits of character which made Lala Boyd Parish a place for herself in the love and affection of all who were fortunate enough to know her. Her radiant influence was felt in people of all ages, in the school with students and teacher alike, in social activities where her example was felt and exerted itself for the cause of better character, and in her church and Sunday school where she left a record of loyalty and faithfulness worthy of emulation by every young person. It is a living memorial and rich tribute to Lala Boyd Parish, and an honor to the fortunate girl who receives the award.
First Presbyterian Church received a generous bequest to benefit the youth of the church in memory of Lala Boyd.
The lives of Fanny Walton and Arch McKinnon call us to appreciate their faithful service spreading the good news of Jesus Christ. Their deep commitment humbles us and challenges us. It was a commitment they took to a far-off place of unknown danger and hardships.
The family was not in favor of Fanny Walton marrying Dr. McKinnon, especially since they were planning on going to Africa to be missionaries, and they figured they might not ever see Fanny Walton again. It was so dangerous in Africa.
The early missionaries that went up the Congo River, they didn't last very long because they had all kinds of diseases that they were not familiar with. So often they would actually bring their caskets, and they knew that they would not live very long, but they just kept coming.
In later years, we see the legacy of their service continue at our church.
Fanny Walton emphasized the fact that although everyone cannot go to foreign fields, everyone can contribute to bringing Christ to all people through prayers and gifts.
Her faith-filled witness touched all that knew her in surprising ways.
I remember visiting her in the hospital before she passed away. She would sing the doxology, and just an amazing person, an individual who I think changed many lives, and she certainly helped to change mine.
Fanny Walton's sister, Harriet, gave a monetary gift to establish the McKinnon Trust to support our church's foreign mission work. Since the Trust's inception, it has helped fund the construction of a church in Mozambique, support for Brazilian missionaries, and today's financial assistance for Dr. Sasan Tavasoli. The lives of the Parish family tell a story of love for God, church, family, and friends. Bob and Mary Elizabeth's character became apparent in the aftermath of the devastating loss of their only child.
Instead of keeping on grieving and being self-centered about her, they put their efforts into other young people, which we are so fortunate to have the endowment we have from them.
The Parish Fund has supported several mission trips for our youth, which have made long-lasting impressions.
I've been very fortunate to go on 2 mission trips. Both of them were to the Dominican Republic. First trip, we built a well house for the people who did not have clean water.
The work was hard, but it taught us more than we ever thought that it could. And I think that really opened our eyes to how we wanted to grow as individuals.
The second trip was much more fulfilling, I think, because we were actually working in a community and building houses. I don't think you can put a monetary value on what they came away with from both of those trips.
And it was that joy and happiness isn't something that you obtain through things. It is through Jesus and the life that He's given us.
Also watching them interact with the kids of the community.
We met a little girl whenever we were in the mountains and her family. Her name was Elenita.
It felt like she was a part of our family and our church group.
She was so sweet and precious, and we all just gravitated towards that family.
Do Bible school, or even when we were working on the water filtration system, she would be over there right beside us, kind of playing with us and seeing what we were doing.
Our youth wanted me to teach them different Spanish words so they could try and communicate with the locals. They wanted to try and fix problems the local children had.
The focus of the dental team with our church has been primarily to go into these areas where there's a great need for just general dentistry care.
I loved being able to show people how to take care of themselves, and that helped influence me to become a nurse.
Our youth really gave their hearts to the children we served.
Our youth have been fearless in these mission trips. They have known the Lord and enjoyed spreading their love of the Lord to the people that we've worked with.
I think that these trips really laid a foundation for me on a life of service.
Beyond the ministry down there, getting to know the people of our church better, going to serve together, working together, and get to appreciate each other.
Our former pastor provided his insight into the generosity which led to the McKinnon Trust and the Parish Fund.
I can see a direct connection, almost a DNA kind of connection between the McKinnon Trust and the Parish Fund. They are all interrelated, and I give credit to the McKinnons for beginning that gift that I think inspired the parishes, that also inspired Solon Scott III, and then other Presbyterians since then. So there is a connection. Generosity begets generosity.
The 5 years that I spent at Greenwood, in many ways, is the most productive 5 years of my ministry. I remember with a lot of appreciation. The church was always just a generous church.
The Kiesler family values were rooted in faithful Christian practice.
We went to church, we went to Sunday school, prayer meeting every Wednesday. Every night we sat and we read the Bible.
The Presbyterian priority on providing higher education for the sons and all the daughters, even in the face of the most trying setbacks.
When the crash came in 29 and 30, Father lost everything. I was just graduating from high school. And so I thought, well, I guess I won't go to school. My mother said, yes, you are going to school.
The older sisters rallied their support, and with a joint effort, Ella Fountain set off for Mississippi State College for Women and graduated 4 years later. We see General Kiesler as an extraordinary leader in service to his community.
He was civic-minded. He did things for the greater good. And I'm not just talking about the bridge, electricity. There were a lot of things that he was involved in, and not just to rake in millions of dollars or whatever. It was to make everything better for Greenwood.
And finally, the Kiesler sons in service to their country.
Very patriotic. Both sons were ready to go off and fight World War I. In fact, both did, and both graduated from Davidson College, but did their graduation at Chickamauga during their basic training.